And we're good. Hello. In this episode, we are going to go over my answers to the Proust Questionnaire as a way for you to get to know me. I wanted to introduce myself to those who aren't so close to me or don't know me in a way that I think is deep and meaningful and insightful. And perhaps will inspire you to take your own Proust Questionnaire. For those of you who don't know what this is, it is a questionnaire that Marcel Proust, the French writer, would answer, and basically the gist behind it goes that we should answer these questions multiple times throughout our lives to kind of witness and reflect on our progression as individuals. His brilliance is captured in this quote, which I will read to you right now. In reality, every reader is, while he is reading, the reader of his own self. The writer's work is merely a kind of optical instrument which he offers to the reader to enable him to discern what, without this book, he would perhaps never have perceived in himself. So, without further ado, I am going to read you my answers to the Proust Questionnaire. We've taken a few questions away. I think the questionnaire is typically about 35 questions. I will also link to the questionnaire in the show notes so that you can take it yourself, write it down in your journal and date it. And, in a few years, a decade, you can do the same and you can compare. This is my answers to the questionnaire as of November 30th, 2020. I'm 23 years old. What is your idea of perfect happiness? Being fully present in the moment. I think that standard conventions of happiness is unstable. This idea of chasing happiness is it's an emotion, it's fleeting. But I think that there's something way more stable in just being present. What is your greatest fear? Letting fear rule my life and actions. To me, that's really the biggest fear I have. I think we all have fears, but I think the biggest thing for me is what I do with those fears or what power I give to those fears. There's a quote or saying that basically says, fearlessness is not the absence of fear. Fearlessness is feeling the fear and doing it anyway. And that really resonates for myself. What is the trait you most deplore in yourself? Being my worst critic. Now, I think that there is something to be said for being perceptive and critical and detail-oriented, which I am all of those things to myself, but it certainly gets in the way. And I've definitely seen that, as I've been building Reself and working on Reself. And it's also something that I've been working to overcome these past few months and throughout this project, especially in instances where I seek solace away from the project. So in my art and painting and whatever, I had to come to this realization recently, a few months ago, that it doesn't matter if a painting is perfect. It just matters that I do it and I work on it and I don't let that perfectionism get in the way of my actions. Next question. What is the trait you most deplore in others? Complacency and ignorance. Complacency, I think, is perhaps it's been a great issue for centuries. But I think that today we're seeing how much of an issue it plays when people sit back and, allow for things and support things that are unacceptable or harmful or, fill in the blank. Complacency, I think, is a really big issue of our time. And I actively work to combat my own complacency. And I really struggle relating to people who seem to be okay with being complacent and don't seem to see fault in it. And ignorance. Ignorance, I think, is best described as a choice, a choosing to ignore. There's not knowing, and then there's choosing to ignore. And the latter, ignorance, is something that I don't accept because we live in a day and age where access to information is so simple, so easy, so widespread. If someone isn't choosing to end their own ignorance and to resolve their not knowing, especially of social matters, matters of justice, all of that, I don't respect people that choose to ignore. Which living people do you most admire? Dave Chappelle. For those of you who are familiar with Chappelle's comedy, there's that. And for those who are perhaps fewer and far between that see the philosophical work within Chappelle's comedy and perspective and just how well he articulates his ideas, I really respect him. I respect his freedom. I respect his challenging of systems. He's a terrific inspiration. And I've learned quite a bit from him. And I very much admire him. And I see who I want to be in him. If you haven't, I would totally recommend checking out his Instagram post, Unforgiven, talking about the powers that be in Hollywood, in contracts, discussing Chappelle's show being streamed, etc. Very powerful. And the 14th Dalai Lama. I very much admire this man. I think for someone who comes from a culture that has been through so much as the Tibetan people have, his smile says it all. And I think that when I see him smile and how frequently he smiles, it's very evident that he is practicing something powerful, which I very much admire and try to follow suit in. What is your current state of mind? Grateful. I think that when things get difficult, when I'm stressed, when I'm, feeling down, feeling self-pity, etc., it's all so easily ended for me when I focus on all that I have to be grateful for. And I've been really falling back on gratitude during, COVID and quarantine. And I think that it's just such a simple way to live your life and to put things in perspective. What do you consider the most overrated virtue? I crossed out overrated and wrote underrated because I was looking at a website called virtuesforlife.com. As I read through them, they all just resonated with me as being worth striving for. And as someone, who studies virtue as a philosopher, I don't necessarily think that any of those are overrated. So I decided to choose what I felt at this time is perhaps the most underrated. I recommend going on this website to kind of, browse through these virtues and read their definitions. And I like how they, it's a short, simple definition. For example, assertiveness, disposed to or characterized by bold or confident statements and behavior, complements confidence and courage, transcends self-doubt and shyness. I think that, it's a really great thing. And to me, I think that, virtues are just the product of practiced daily actions. So in the sense of assertiveness, having boundaries and really being able to communicate your boundaries without apologizing. I think that that's really something in the past few years I've been practicing and have been working towards, and it's just an incredible relief to do so. So for me, I said that I felt the most underrated virtues were creativity and imaginative. I thought that those two go together, and I will read you their definitions and their complements and what they transcend. Creativity, the ability to make new things or think of new ideas. Complements joy and purposefulness, transcends ordinary. Everyone is creative. Everyone has an imagination, and that's why I put imaginative next to it, because, I think that as we grow up, as I've grown up, I've seen the ways in which, as a child, I was incredibly imaginative. I lived almost in a dream world, and I so often fell back on my imagination. As I got older, I could see the ways in which I was almost losing it, or I just wasn't tapping into it enough. And for me, that's a great loss. And so I have actively tried to practice using my imagination, my creativity. Again, it's something everyone can do. If you say I'm not creative, it's just, it's putting up a wall for you to create, to make new things or think of a new idea. That's something everyone can do. That's something our imagination is literally for. So I think that the more we use that, again, the more it complements joy and feelings of purpose and transcending the ordinary. And I think that that's a really important thing. I'll read the definition for imaginative. Imaginative, having or showing an ability to think of new and interesting ideas, having or showing imagination, complements creativity, transcends ordinary, and rationalism. Rationalism to me is something I think that, is really important to balance. I struggle as a philosopher with this emphasis that human beings are best because we're rational beings. But again, rational thought is only, half of the equation, so to speak. The other half is the imagination, and we can't forget that, because when the imagination and reason or rational thought coexist and works together, I think that's when really incredible things happen. And that is why I put that there. Passionate. Passion is something that I think has always spoke to me, even as a child. And I want to read that to you. Having or showing or expressing strong emotions or beliefs. Complements enthusiasm and purposefulness, transcends indifference. Passion is an incredible thing and is part of being human. It's part of being human to feel and show and have and express strong emotions. Obviously, there's a balance to that, which is to not be ruled by emotion. For me, I can always do with being passionate, and I can always benefit from that. And I think a lot of people can as well. I also want to read the definition for purposefulness, because that was something I put on here. Having a purpose as in something set up as an object or end to be attained. Complements creativity, commitment, joyfulness, transcends boredom and indifference. I think the indifference definitely goes along with complacency. I'm someone that subscribes to the belief that we all have a purpose. I think that's something to not lose sight of in our lives, especially, at the age that I'm at, as I watch friends go off into careers they're not happy with already, etc., study, pick paths of study that for quote unquote job stability but don't seem to strike any passion or purpose for them. I think that's something to really be mindful of and take note of and ask yourself, why am I doing this? What else could I be exploring that perhaps is more in line with my purpose? You don't have to know what your purpose is. You just have to follow the pings of your heart that will lead you towards your purpose, and it will all make sense. Finally, I know it asks for one, but I have difficulty picking. So the last one I said was tenacious, persistent in maintaining, adhering to, or seeking something valued or desired. Complements discipline and perseverance, transcends indecision. Indecision is something that I have been aware of in my own life, I would say for the past, year or so, and have really been trying to challenge in the small ways and in the big ways, because it all adds up. I think there's so much to be said for persistence and discipline and perseverance, and I've been learning and practicing all those things as I've been building Reself, and just in doing healing work on yourself and healing and forgiving things of the past and being introspective and figuring out who you are and everything. That takes discipline and perseverance and persistence, because in all of those things there is something you are seeking, something that is desired and valued. One shouldn't lose sight of that. Next question. On what occasion do you lie? I don't, but as a child I lied when I justified it to myself. And in parentheses I said, this is very dangerous. A lot of people either learn that the easy way or the hard way. I think that more often than not, people lie because they've justified it to themselves, not because they're trying to be, evil or deceptive. I think that the first is way more common. And I think that, in my experience, that's dangerous. When you justify to yourself telling a lie, it's a slippery slope. Which living person do you most despise? I changed the word despise to am disgusted by. There's no room for hatred or despising people in my world, but we can be disgusted by people. And those people are, to me, those who perpetuate injustice, greed, and evil. All those people that you can think of and name that are doing things that are self-serving and are causing more harm to the general public or environment. What is the quality you most like in a man? This was a very gender binary setup for what you most like in a man and a woman. So I also added just what I like in everyone. And I think, both of these answers go for everybody. But the quality I most like in a man is someone who is unafraid of a powerful woman. I think that in my own life, I've experienced a lot of boys, not really men, but certainly boys, who I have felt seem to be threatened by a self-reliant, powerful, individualistic woman. What is the quality you most like in a woman? Unwavering strength and belief in herself. I think that speaks for itself. And in everyone, I like people that are experimental and not afraid to try new things, not afraid to, and with that goes open-mindedness and accepting. Those to me are the really big things, and they're things that I all strive for. What or who is the greatest love of your life? My dog, Noor. I got him as a junior in college. My parents didn't really support this, but I have wanted a dog and understood what a dog could give to me since I was in 5th grade. And as a junior in college, I decided that I'm an adult and this is what I want. And so this is what I'm going to do because I know that it's good for me. And it has been the best thing. It has taught me patience and responsibility, perspective. It's great. And he's great. His name is Arabic. It means light. I chose the name after one of my very good friends. She was kind of in an off place prior to getting Noor, and I was trying to do something to cheer her up. So she's Moroccan, so I wanted to pick an Arabic word to put on a necklace that could lift her spirits every time that she read it. And so Noor was the word that I chose out of the very many beautiful words that the Arabic language offers. When and where were you happiest? In the present moment. This may sound cliche. To me, it's really true. I think that if I look at my most happiest moments, I was just completely there and completely present. So I think that speaks for itself. Which talent would you most like to have? Hear any song and be able to play it instantly on the piano. I adore music. I listen to so much music, but I don't play an instrument. I don't sing, but I think that would be an incredible talent to have and to share with people. If you could change one thing about yourself, what would it be? My inability to entertain small talk. I wouldn't change this. It'd just be nice to not be existentially bothered by it. I really struggle with small talk, especially talking to people that I know I'm not vibing with, that we aren't like-minded. I find that very difficult. And I just want to talk about deep things and important things and things that matter. I really don't want to waste my breath, another person's breath, my time, another person's time on insignificant things that don't matter. And it does bother me. I will be irked by those conversations, and it's definitely grown more difficult over the years. But I hope to do better at it because obviously there's a balance and, you got to start somewhere, right? What do you consider your greatest achievement? Healing. I had a lot to heal from going into college. I experienced a lot of trauma, and very difficult things as a child, really, / young adult. Not to hype myself up, but I'm incredibly proud of who I am today and how much I've grown from versions past of myself and how much I've healed and taken back my power and my control of my life and my emotions and everything. So I find my healing to be my greatest achievement. For sure. If you were to die and come back as a person or a thing, what would it be? I'd like to know what it'd be like to be a tree, to be such an integral part of nature. I think that trees are incredible, and I've felt this way since I was a child. I very much feel connected to trees, and I think that the way they shed their leaves and then grow their leaves, the way that they're homes to other animals, the way that they give us the air that we breathe, I would very much like to be a tree. And they can live a very long time when they're not being cut down and victims to deforestation, which would definitely be a negative thing if I happened to be a tree that popped up in an area where palm oil is being harvested. There's a great book that I have in my queue right now called The Hidden Lives of Trees. I'm excited to read it. It basically talks about how trees work and communicate with each other, and I think it's very interesting and very cool. Next question. Where would you most like to live? I haven't visited nearly enough places to know, but I need nature. I definitely know I need nature. I've lived in a city, I've lived in a suburb, in the woods, and I very much need nature, but I also very much need culture. So there's a balance to be found with that. I'm interested to see how that plays out. And I'm certainly interested to see where I end up settling. I love travel and I love experiencing new cultures and new places. I don't think I've been to nearly enough places to know where I'd like to settle. What is your most treasured possession? Again, with the multiple answers. Books, my journals, letters. I love books. I have so many books. That's where I spend my money. I love to read. I love to learn. My journals, I have so many journals. This is where I spend my money. For anyone who has been considering journaling or keeping a journal or a notebook of their ideas and thoughts and etc., I totally recommend it. I started journaling when I was about 13 years old. So I have journals for 10 years. 10 full years of inspiring quotes, thoughts, working shit out, all of that stuff. And it's incredible to see that growth. It's an incredible thing. And I would totally recommend it. Journaling has helped me a lot, and it really helps me work things out. If I'm having a thought that I need to work out and figure out, where is this coming from? How can I resolve this? What do I need to do to transcend this? Writing it out physically helps me so much. And for some people, it's recording themselves, recording, voice memos or, talking to yourself in the mirror, whatever. But I think it's really cool to have that physical documentation of it. And letters. I write a lot of letters to people, and I think that letters are such an incredible thing. I save almost every letter or card or whatever that someone gives to me. They touch my heart, and I aim to touch people's hearts when I write my letters to them. So letters mean a lot to me. What do you regard as the lowest depth of misery? Not feeling deeply, not paying attention, not waking up and living consciously, not questioning the status quo, and not living life on your own terms. What is your favorite occupation? Of all the things that I do and aspire to do and plan to do and take part in and have hobbies in, my favorite is student. And it doesn't have to be a student of the classroom, more so a student of life. I love to learn. I love to grow. What is your most marked characteristic? The way I answered this question was I put my answer, and then I asked one of my closest, most long-term friends what she would say. So my answer was my perspective. I think I have a very big picture is kind of the wrong word, like a deep but profoundly simple perspective on things. I think I do a great job of helping friends see the bigger picture and put things in perspective for themselves so that they can carry on and overcome, so to speak. My friend said I think her most emphasized answer was my openness and, how open I am to new things and new ideas and accepting and non-judgmental. That's my interpretation of that. She said my individuality and not being afraid to be myself and express myself, being self-reliant. What do you value most in your friends? Loyalty, non-judgment, and difference. I don't want people to all be the same and have the same opinions and perspectives. Obviously, I want some level of like-mindedness, but I'm really down for difference of perspectives and experience and opinion and just that wisdom that diversity brings. Loyalty and non-judgment, I think, speak for themselves. Who are your favorite writers? To this question, I added poets, musicians, currently at this moment in time. Tolstoy, Rumi, Maya Angelou, Ram Dass, Walt Whitman, Paulo Coelho, Neil Young, Bob Dylan, Common, Bahamas, Prince, Somersault, and Erykah Badu. Check them all out. They all have different reasons for being on there. Who is your hero of fiction? Again, I put more than one. Anna Karenina. She exemplifies a lot of, some of those virtues I talked about, I think. Passion, something I'll talk about in a few questions, which is not caring for the opinions of others over our own opinion and And then the other person I put was Jo March from Little Women. I think she's an incredible, independent woman, strong woman, go-getter, believer in herself. Definitely exemplifies a lot of what I admire. Which historical figure do you most identify with? This was hard, and to spare the egoism, because I really don't know, but I do most identify with those who left the world better than they found it. That's my biggest, I think, aim in life. When I learned about Gandhi when I was 11 or 12, his quote, "Be the change you wish to see in the world," just touched me. And I think that's really what I stand for. So that's what I identify with in historical figures. Who are your heroes in real life? Those who fearlessly follow their hearts and dreams. It's pretty simple. And I think that those people are less common. I find it essential to identify those people, connect with those people, and stay close to them in whatever facet that means. What is it that you most dislike? Valuing others' opinions more than your own. In this time in my life, that really, and has for decades, really been not caring about what others say about you. And that's not to say like you shouldn't take constructive criticism from the right people. Life is way too short to be so concerned with what everyone else is saying about you. If you're a good person and you're doing good and you're good with your own, your house is in order, fuck what you heard, fuck what other people have to say, and just do you. To me, that's one of my most important notions and things that I live by. Hope to be contagious to people I come in contact with. Just life is way too short. There's no room for concern for that kind of bull. That's something that Dave Chappelle really exemplifies, and I quite admire and I identify with in him. What is your greatest regret? I only regret what I have yet to forgive myself for. I really don't believe in having regrets, but I definitely find that feeling of regret, for me, when it comes up, is just the byproduct of something I haven't forgiven myself for. I hold myself to a very high standard. I've had to learn over the past, year, as I've really been reflecting on things from way in my past, and how they might still be affecting me under the surface and subconsciously, that I really just haven't forgiven myself for. And I have to forgive myself for not knowing what I know now and for doing the best I could at that moment in time. And I think that that's something that we as a society and in the digital era are really struggling with as well right now. Cancel culture is so toxic and so unforgiving. It's just unacceptable. And I think that that's the product of maybe perhaps people not forgiving themselves and not holding room for mistake and error, not using those as learning lessons and as things to learn from. And I think that part of the path of forgiveness is learning from it. If you don't learn from it, you're doomed to repeat it again. That's my big strive in forgiving myself and learning from the past. We're almost done here. Hang tight. 2 more questions. How would you like to die? Wise. It's very simple. I would just like to be a wise woman. When I first learned about Buddhism, again, when I was 11, 12 years old, I immediately identified with the idea of enlightenment and decided that I would try to be enlightened by the end of my life. And that's certainly still a goal of mine. It's certainly something worth striving for. And at the very least, I would like to die wise. Finally, what is your motto? Everything happens for a reason. Or who's to say? I often use that in a rhetorical sense when you just really don't know. Who's to say? Who's to say what's going to happen tomorrow? Who's to say? But everything happens for a reason. I'm someone that firmly subscribes to this belief. As someone having been through incredibly difficult things, equally good things, I think that everything happens for a reason. And even if it doesn't, even if there is no scientific explanation or reason for things, there is certainly power in moving through life, ascribing to that view in that lens. And there's a lot of power that comes in that. For example, if you're in a job you don't like and you know this to be true, if you subscribe to the belief that, you're in this job for a reason, then perhaps you could see you're in the job to learn that you need to stick to what you know to be true and what your heart is telling you, and you need to act on that. There's benefit to doing so. That's it. Those are my answers to the Proust Questionnaire. And, now you have a better sense of who I am. I hope. That was my aim in this. I strongly encourage you to do this for yourself. I think that it'll be really cool for me to do this in 10 years and see how my things have changed. Thanks for listening to this episode of As It Goes. Don't forget to follow the app on Instagram to stay up to date with progress and get daily self-improvement content until the app goes live in the beginning of 2021. I'll see you next week. Bye, guys.